Oh, here. Hate it.
Woman, we're going to just jump straight in because this is a conversation I have been looking forward to having for a long time.
Me too. Me too. That's
Yeah.
fine with me.
Well, so why don't you start off by just sharing with the women listening, like, how did you find yourself on this journey? And then how did we meet?
Yeah, definitely. So my journey began. So I was diagnosed with endometriosis in my early 20s. It happened to be just kind of an influential finding when I got an IUD placed. So they removed a cyst and then biopsied it and then ended up finding that I had endometriosis. So I was like, okay, no big deal. I'm in my 20s. I don't care at that point, right? So yeah, so then flash forward to maybe, I think it was like maybe 30, 34, 33 around there. Yeah, I met my husband and we decided we wanted to have a baby together. So we were trying, and then I already kind of knew. I was like, well, I know endometriosis is kind of hard to to conceive a baby when you do have that. So I was already like, you know what, we probably need to see a specialist for this. So I was already like on the game for that. So we went to actually one of my friends recommended a clinic that was in Colorado or down in Denver. And so um, we ended up meeting with the doc there and just kind of talking about everything um and yeah, and so he was like, well, let's just run some tests and see kind of like where we're at on things and all that good stuff. And so I remember I was working. I remember the exact day and time I was working, and then ended up reading my lab results. And so I'm just like Googling all these things because I'm like, I don't know what all these tests mean. So then I go to the AMH portion of it, and it was super, super low. It was like, I think, 0.16, I think. So I was just kind of like, I don't know what that means. And so looking it up, it was like, basically, I have like very low egg reserve basically. So I was freaking out a little bit about that. And so then we ended up going back into meeting with the doc again. And he basically was saying, like, your chances of conceiving naturally is probably like less than 1%, giving your yeah. Yeah. I was just like, what? And at that point, I was just like, well, I didn't know really how to take the news. I was just kind of like, meh, it should be fine. But yeah, but he told me straight up was just like less than 1%, your age, because I'm a geriatric pregnancy would be. So he was like, yeah, exactly. So he's just like, well, your age and you have endometriosis, your AMH is very, very low. So, it's least likely you're gonna get pregnant naturally. So my husband or my fiance at the time, husband, so he went back and we're like, you know what, let's just try. Like we haven't gotten married yet, so let's just kind of get the marriage, the wedding stuff out of the way, and then we'll kind of start there. So instead of like going straight into IVF, because obviously after that he was like, you need to do IVF. Like that's the only way you're gonna get pregnant is through IVF. And so yeah, so we got married, and granted, it was during COVID, of course. So we had to postpone our wedding. So we were supposed to get married in June, and then we had to postpone the wedding um, until September. And so after that, we started kind of trying, and I think we were trying for about like maybe a good 4 or 5 months. And then I was finally like, you know what? Maybe we do need to do IVF. All my friends around me, everybody was getting pregnant left and right. It was just like, why aren't we getting pregnant? Like, what's happening here? So I decided to be like, all right, let's just go back in. Let's just do a round of the IVF. Maybe that's just what we need. So yes, we went in, talked to the doc, and then we got everything started with the IVF, which was the most terrible process. So I give a lot of credit to a lot of women who've done this more than once. um, one time was like what and done was kind of my thoughts there because the shots were terrible, pills, the timing of everything. So yeah, so we ended up doing one round of IVF, and um, I just remember when they were doing the harvesting of my eggs, the egg collection. I remember I only had two eggs that they collected, and it was so heartbreaking because I remember, I'm sorry to share up a little bit too. So, um, I remember when I was like sitting in the little like post-op area and, they don't have like, it's not a private room. Obviously there's just like curtains and you can just, you can hear the other like people coming in from after when they got their eggs collected and everything like that. And so the lady next to me, they're like, "Oh, you got like 10 eggs." And then the lady next to me on the other side was like 20 eggs. And I was like, "Oh." And so they said they write down like, excuse me. I'm like, "Yeah." So, they write down, how many eggs you got. And I looked down at my hand and it was like two. And we are like, "Oh, so I only have like a really small percent chance to get pregnant, see if these are even viable." And so, they incubate it, they do all the good stuff with that. So we get a call the next day from the lab and they're like, "Well, one egg didn't make it into the blastocyst stage and everything. So, but you still have one that actually made it." So we're super excited. We're just like, "Yes, like this probably is the one and everything." And so, they're like, "Well, we won't call you for the next until like maybe 5 days later. And then we can let you know if it's survived and if it's developing into an embryo and all that stuff." And so, yeah, so we were like, "Okay, cool." So we were all excited about it. And I remember driving into work and they called me like on that fifth day and they're like, "Yeah, so didn't make it. So, um, sorry." And that was it. I was like, "All right, great." So I have to go into work, like just feeling just like super defeated and just like, what are we going to do now? Like, it's all my fault, like with everything going on. And my husband was great through all of this, like never blamed me for anything. He was like, "Whatever you want to do, like it's up to you." So, anyway, so we go back to this, reproductive doctor and he tells me like, "IVF didn't work for you. I mean, we could do another round, but I mean, most likely it's not going to work for you. So let's just move to donor eggs like right now." And so he's giving me all these numbers and statistics like, this is like, if you do get pregnant, like these are the chances, like there can be some abnormalities and all this stuff going on. So, um, I remember just crying in the office, just like, "Oh my gosh." And he's just kind of looking at me like, kind of, "It is what it is. Like, that's that. Just let me know if you want to do another round IVF." And then he just left. Like, yeah. So then, my husband and I left the office, and then my husband just looks at me and is just like, "You know what? Like, it's up to you. It's your body. If you want to do a second round, fine, we can do it. But if you don't want to put yourself through that, I've been watching you put yourself through the shots and all that stuff. And so, yeah, it's up to you. We don't have to do another round." And so it's like, "Fine, yeah, like let's just, I was like, let's just sleep on it. We'll see. I don't know if I want to do that again as well." So then I ended up just like going hardcore, looking at different diets, all these different things to do to kind of help increase my chances of getting pregnant naturally. So I'm listening to all these podcasts, and all of a sudden, with a funny, it's probably like that funny like algorithm Facebook does, but your podcast popped up onto my feed, and I was like, "Oh, like this lady looks kind of like there was the pink hair you had at the time, the pink and the black." So I was like, "Oh yeah, she's my style. Like I like her style, so I'm just gonna listen to her." Because all the other podcasts I was listening to, granted they were very informational, but it was very like, I don't know, it wasn't something that I needed, like advice wise. So it just wasn't clicking for me. So yeah, so I ended up stumbling across your podcast, and the rest is history. I just was listening to it and I was just like blown away by how real you were with everything and just kind of like snapping yourself out of this rut and just like telling people how it is. Like, get your shit together. This is like, all the stuff you got to do and kind of work on yourself. And I ended up buying your book as well, which also turned me on to just being like, all right, I feel like I need to sign up for her class. And I think that was the best investment that I've ever done. Oh yeah, I forgot to also mention when I was on this like fertility journey, I was doing, I think I did so much acupuncture, which was great. but they were also making me drink like these weird herbs and stuff. And I remember your story with like going to Chinatown and getting the black chicken or something like that. I was like, I didn't get that extreme, but yeah, so I felt like I did so many things, but then stumbling across your podcast, and then yeah, that's just kind of how I ended up finding you, and I'm so grateful to this day because yeah, we I have a lovely little 9 month old actually in a couple of days. And so yeah, and it's the best thing ever. Being a mom is just so amazing. So yeah, that's my journey to you, Rosie. And so and I just
Oh man. Well, it's so interesting to me because, well, first of all, I have to ask you this question because you remember when we first met. You remember when we had our first conversation. Did you ever imagine what it would be like to have this conversation? Did you ever imagine that you would go from being a listener to this podcast, then going to the program, and then now being a guest?
Nope, not at all. I was not even thinking it. I was just like, no, I mean, it's not going to happen. And that was the thing was like my whole thought process back then was so negative. And I was like, I'm not going to make it. And I'm just hearing all these women are like, my goal is to get on the podcast. And that never was my goal. But I was like, you know what? That is going to be my goal. Like, I'm going to get on this podcast. But yes, I would not have imagined. Like, if you would have told me this, like, 2 years ago, I'd have been like, you're crazy. Like, have you seen the statistic? Have you seen the statistics and the numbers? Like, no, I'm never going to get this. Right?
Well, I mean, and so let's dive into that because I love, well, and you're in medicine, so you understand, like you probably understand more than most people what the statistics are saying, right?
Right.
Like to be told by somebody in a white coat, for better or worse, right?
Right.
That, hey, you got a less than 1% chance of conceiving naturally. Like your whole world can be like, like you can, because that sounds basically like it's not happening. Right.
Yeah.
So
Right.
what made you as a medical professional, like want to look in this mindset area? Because you, Pauline, you could have easily said, you know what, that sounds like fine, her podcast is maybe a little funny and it's kind of kick ass, but like, why would I do that and do this program knowing what I know? Because tons of women are thinking that way. Like, I don't need this because you know what? The doctor's already told me I have a less than 1% chance. Like, why did you pursue this?
That's a good question. So I feel like just changing my mindset, I feel like a lot of it I don't know, I just, my gut feeling, that woman intuition, I just kind of like, I feel like these are just numbers. And a lot of times, like being the medical professional, sometimes these numbers can be skewed and, they're kind of off. And so they're not really good predictors sometimes. And so my gut feeling was just like, my body can do this. Like, I just know my body could do this. And even though I wasn't thinking that at the time where I was like, yeah, my mindset's this, because it really wasn't like my mindset was very negative at that time. But it was that kind of woman's intuition gut feeling that I was just like, no, I feel like my body is meant to conceive naturally and it's going to do it. And I don't know how or when or when it's going to happen and all that, but it was just that gut feeling. And then like I said, it was just so, and then I feel like stumbling on your podcast and listening to everything and hearing other women's stories as well, their past stories, and going through probably worse than what I went through and then conceiving naturally for them, I felt like that was very motivating as well. So it was my mommy gut. I was meant to be a mom. And that.
I love that you're saying that. I mean, well, so okay, so you basically get into this place where you're like, look, I'm gonna look at this mindset thing. My gut's telling me this is what I need. So what did you start noticing in you though when you started doing the work? What were some of the changes that you noticed in you?
I feel like I've noticed I had a little bit more self-confidence, a lot because most of the times I never really thought about it. I thought I did, but I felt like I didn't have it to the degree that I should have it. And I noticed basically just changing the way I would think about things. I remember one of your exercises or one of the podcasts that you had, it was just kind of like, kind of don't limit yourself. I mean, it was like that with the whole like money thing. I know you were just kind of like, hey, don't feel like, oh, I can't spend money on this because I have to like save it and I can't think about things in the future. You're just kind of just like, just let everything go and just like do it. Like, I think that was one of your exercises. Just don't think, just do it. And, and I think that's what happened was I just like, was like, you know what? I'm just going to do what I want to do. I don't think I put myself first a lot of times. I put other people first. And I feel like, yeah, that's just kind of a big lesson you taught me. And also I was going to say with that whole thing was like, I think it was during that time we ended up just like buying a house. So yeah, it was funny because we walked in and I was like, I love it, I want it, and I'm in this new mindset where we're like, we're just gonna let go and do it. Granted, I know we got to be responsible in that sense to make sure it was fine, but obviously it was for us, and so we just were like, yeah, we did it. And I was like, this is where I see, I was kind of using more picturing more of the future. And so I was like, I feel like this is where we're meant to have like babies. Like this is like our current house wasn't where we were meant to be, but this one I feel like I can see ourselves like we have a kid running around. We have more open space for her to be playing, her or him to be playing at the time. Um, and so, yeah, I feel like my whole mindset just like changed in that sense where I was being more confident and being more free to do things and also just, I don't know, just like kind of, um, yeah, like I said, putting myself first, which I never did.
That. I mean, imagine
Yeah,
that because you put other people first day in and day out for a living. That's just what you
yeah,
do, right?
exactly.
And
Hmm.
isn't it funny that we somehow tell ourselves that putting ourselves last or not doing the thing that we want to do, that's like responsible. We don't ever think that, hey, what if it's the most responsible thing ever for me to actually go for what I say that I want? What if that's actually the responsible thing?
Exactly. Yeah, I know. And a lot of times people don't think that, and I feel like yeah, like you said, in my profession and even like in life, I'm always like everybody, like I put a lot of things first. And my husband even pointed that out where it was like, you need to like do things for you sometimes. And it was like, yeah, I do actually, like whether it's like doing a little bit of like meditation in the morning, which that's actually what I started to do, kind of listening and doing the program with it was just kind of, I think it was the toolbox, the last one in your program. And it was just like having the schedule to routinely do things every day. And that's what I did. Like I meditated every day and I just kept telling myself like I'm gonna get pregnant naturally and all this like self-confidence and I can do this and everything. So I found a bunch of different meditations that I was like, no, I'm putting aside at least 10-15 minutes to myself before I start my day. And I was very much structured to that. And I think that's what kind of helped me do that because I felt like prior to this, my life was very chaotic and it was like, yep, work came first, family is next, my friends. And it was like, there's barely time for me time at all and any self-care or anything like that. So,
Wow.
um, yeah.
Wow. Well, so okay, so you're doing this program, you're feeling better. When did things start turning around for you? Because something pretty miraculous happened for you. So why don't you walk us through that?
Yeah, definitely. So, let's see. So I think your program started for me, I think it was like August 2021, I believe. Yeah. So I remember we were on our Lake Tahoe trip and that's when I like spoke with you and everything there. But yeah, so that's when kind of things started happening. So doing I think after I finished your program, that's when things started to kind of change where I was like, all right, like I'm going to, like I said, take time for myself every day, do my meditation, do my journaling, and do some of the exercise, even repeating some of the exercises that we were doing every week, So, I would do them every week, and then it was like, okay, program's over, but I would still continue to practice and do what you were kind of saying, like journaling. I had my bump squat stuff, and it was like, um, taking like having support from friends, and it was kind of good. And actually being open more to talk to people about kind of what was going on in my life, because I think I was more closed in, where I was like, I didn't want people to know that I had an issue getting pregnant or what was going on with my body and everything like that. But I started to get more comfortable and confident about kind of telling people what's going on and all that. And making changes and not being very stubborn to it, because I am a very stubborn person. You can ask my husband sometimes. So I think I became more open-minded and just had this different mindset and being more positive and everything, and just giving myself that confidence to say, yeah, like you can, get pregnant and you can do this on your own, and don't stress out too much about it. And anytime I would find myself stressed about things, I would turn back to just doing like the journal stuff. And I think the biggest thing was like holding on to a lot of um, stuff in the past that I feel like was probably another thing as well. So I think the best exercise, or one of actually all the exercises were pretty good, but the best one I really liked was kind of writing those letters to forgive people in your life and kind of move past it and move on. So I feel like mentally that definitely helped with everything, and kind of getting me into this better mindset. So
Mm.
yeah, and it's crazy because people overlook it, and I feel like that's a big thing. And I mean, not just getting pregnant, just for any everyday life, is having a better mindset on life. And I feel like that this whole thing that changed um, kind of happened to me, changed my mindset, but it also, and I'm just happy that it's also, moving forward, I have a different mindset ongoing. So yeah.
So now, okay, because I remember you sent me an email. Like
Mhm.
it was hilarious because I remember saying, "Oh, Pauline, oh my gosh, like what she's sending?" I remember I saw your name in my account and I like clicked it and you're like, I'm pregnant, like so like talk to us about the lead up for that because look, because what you're describing and this is, because you're such a humble and generous person, it's easy for you to kind of like leave out some of the struggle, right? Because you're
Yeah.
like, oh, it's just what I do. I just, I take these lessons, I apply them, and then here I am. But but you had to have kept on trying. Like there's a part of you that was like making all these changes, starting to put yourself first, communicating more, sharing with people what was going on, doing the forgiveness and moving through that. So tell us about this lead up to this gorgeous miracle baby because I cannot wait to hear the full story.
Yep. So we basically just spent that whole time leading up to like not caring, kind of just being like, you know what? If it doesn't happen, we'll be dog parents for the rest of our lives. We're not going to stress about it. So we ended up just kind of taking our vacations and putting ourselves first and just doing what we wanted to do. And so, um, yeah, it was crazy. So we did more golfing. My husband and I are both golfers, so we spent time golfing, hiking, and just doing all these things. I changed up my diet as well. Like I kind of was like, well, you know, um, I'm gonna just kind of work on other things as well. And so changed up our diets, and we just kind of had just both felt so good. Like we both were on this journey together, and it helped too to have a spouse that was just on this journey with me. And so yeah, so we took our vacations. We kind of just like let things go. We were just kind of being free spirited, I guess, in a sense, for those few months leading up to things. And then yeah, and we just what else was that? Golfed, and then oh yeah, and that was the other thing, was my funny story was that um the month before we were going, don't know, it was a couple months before we conceived. We ended up golfing, and there was a golf ball that was in the sand, and I went and I picked it up, and it said Leo on it. And so I was like, oh, that's the name. Like, and that was the name I wanted to always name a baby was Leo, which is crazy. Leo or Liam. Yeah. So I was like, yeah, I was like, so if it means we're gonna have a baby soon. So I picked it up and I showed my husband. And I still have the golf ball to this day. I probably should go grab it. But yeah, this orange golf ball says Leo on it. And I was like, I think this is a sign. My husband's like, you're crazy. Like, it's fine. Like, no, it's not. So we picked it up. I was like, all right, well, I'm just gonna keep it. And so it might be silly, but I felt like that was like my sign of like, okay, things are gonna happen. Things are gonna turn around from here. And then, yeah. And so then I kept continuing to doing my journaling, my mindset stuff, all that good stuff, meditating, exercising, eating right and everything like that. And so, um, I think I was just like, I think one morning I was just kind of like, well, before work, like 5 a.m. in the morning, I was just kind of like, well, I don't know. I don't feel like, I just kind of feel like I need to take a test. There was no real reason. I was just kind of like, nah, I know it's probably going to be negative and it's going to be okay because back before this whole mindset working on myself stuff was going on, it'd be like negative pregnancy tests. I'd be bursting into tears. My whole day would be ruined, all that stuff. So I was like, yeah, I'm just going to try it and just see. And, if it's not pregnant, then it's okay. Like we'll moving on and keep trying and just have a good time. We're just going to do that. Um, so, obviously peed on my stick and there was a little faint line. I was like, I don't know. It was these cheap little pregnancy sticks I bought off of Amazon. It was like $5 or something. And I was like, oh, this is right. So then I was like, I'll just wait and take another test, like maybe tomorrow. And so then I took another test, and then the line was a little bit more, you can see it a little bit better. And so I was like, all right, I'm just gonna splurge on like the more expensive test. And then,
Woo!
yeah, and so then I was like, I'm just gonna do it. And then I ended up doing that, and it said pregnant, and I was just like, wait, what is? And it was like in our bathroom, like 4 a.m. in the morning, like so that's when I would always do the test and everything. And I was just like, what, like, am I really like, is this real or, I don't know what to say. And so I just was like, I was just in shock because I was like, I don't think is this really real? Like, I feel like I gotta wait a little bit longer. So I ended up like, there's this lab test place that you can go to and just get whatever lab test you want. And knowing me, my science brain and everything, I was like, I feel like the urine test is probably off or something. So I went and got a lab test for my HCG levels, and it was showing it was like they were climbing, and so I was like, all right, I think this is good. So then, because I didn't want to, get my husband's hopes up because I remember we got our hopes up with the whole one egg, kind of like going to the blastocyst stage and all that good stuff. So I didn't want to get his hopes up and I wanted to wait a little bit longer, but then I couldn't. And so usually I'm known for bringing home sweets from work because our patients like to give us cookies and all that stuff. And so then I brought a home, I got a little onesie. It says our next adventure begins, and then put the little pregnancy test in there and on top of the onesie in this little box. It looked like a little cake box. So I come home, I was like, oh, I got a surprise. And he's just like, wait, what are you talking about? I was like, I got like someone brought a cake to the clinic and and I probably should have done better. I should have put something else heavier in it, but he was just like, why is it so light? Like it's a cake. Like it should be a little bit heavier. So then he opens it and he's just like, no way. I was like, yes, like this is real. And he was like, you're lying. I was like, no. And then I took out all the other three pregnancy tests. I was like, these are all positive. I took the blood test and yeah, and so yep, and the rest is history. So then we ended up getting pregnant and honest and it came at and you know what, kind of I'm in a little bit spiritual in a sense where I feel like so we lost his brother like a month or actually like a couple weeks before we conceived. So I felt like this was his gift from his brother that passed away. So yeah, it was kind of a lot going on. So that kind of led up to all this and yeah, so we were like, well, it was definitely a roller coaster year last year with that. We had a death in the family, and then it was like, but then we conceived our first baby finally, and yeah. So, but yeah, very grateful. But we just felt like spiritually both kind of like that. We were like, you know what? I feel like this was our gift after he left the world. So, after my husband's brother left the world. So, yeah. So it was crazy. But other than that, we got pregnant, and pregnancy was great. And now we have our little baby girl, and she's just precious. So,
Pauline, so I mean, like, it's so crazy. I mean, think about what you're saying here. Like, you basically went from like endometriosis, low AMH, low egg reserve, 2 eggs retrieved during your first IVF cycle, only like being told that one made it, but then not really because nothing was there, like it didn't make it, to deciding you weren't going to do IVF. It wasn't right for you. Starting this crazy mindset journey, trusting your gut, and starting to work the system. And you started in August of 2021, and you have a 9-month-old daughter now. So basically within a year of working on mindset, despite being told you had a 1% chance, less than 1% chance of conceiving naturally, less than 1% chance of conceiving naturally, you now have a 9-month-old daughter.
Yes, that is so true. And I would not have, if you would have told me that back in the day that this was all happening, I would not have believed any of that. I'm like, you're crazy. What's this mindset you're talking about? So, yeah,
I mean, it's incredible. I mean, it always interests me because that's why I ask this question all the time. Like, what was it that made you trust yourself? Because you could have had that maternal, that mama feeling that you were saying, that mother knowing that, hey, my body can do this. And I think at some level we all have that, but I think very few people trust that.
Right.
Like, are willing to take the leap and trust that, because, dude, when we're typically told we have 1% chance of success, we pretty much figure it's over. And it's a gangster move for you to do what you did. What do you think drove you to trust that? Because it's one thing to hear the voice, Pauline, saying my body can do this, but it's another to believe it's possible. And trust that. So what do you think the trust was in you? Like, where did that come from?
Oh man, that's a good question. Like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like, sorry, I'm like thinking about it because I'm like, I'm trying to think back because it's so long ago. Like, I just felt like, I was able to overcome a lot of things in the past. And I was like, we're not going into this whole history of my stuff, but just kind of, like I was just kind of a go-getter in that sense where I was like, you know what, I went through, high school doing all those things and college and everything. And I put myself through, and I was always a go-getter. And I was just like, you know what, I'm going to do it. When I put my mind to it, I'm going to do it. And I felt like my competitive mind as well was just kind of like, you know what, no, like we're going to beat the odds here. And I'm not going to listen to this doctor. I mean, granted, it's like, yes, I mean, I respect his opinions and everything, but I felt like, that's just not me. Like I'm competitive, and we're going to do this like somehow, some way. And I just, yeah, it was that feeling. And I guess, just having that confidence boost to just be like, you know what, my body can do it. And yeah, I don't, I was like, that's kind of a hard question to answer. I'm just like, I was like, I don't know what kind of turned for me there, where it was like, I'm just going to not think about what what the statistics were. So, yeah, I just, like I said, like my gut feeling's always usually right. I feel like it's that women's
Amen.
intuition. So
Amen.
yeah, I'm like, I don't know what to say. It's just like, I just knew in my mind and my gut. Yeah, but it was just all like, no, this is gonna happen. And, and granted it did kind of help my mom. She's she's kind of a spiritual lady as well. And she was saying like, she's like, oh, it's gonna happen naturally. You just wait. Like you just wait, just keep
I
telling
love
yourself,
it. You got
you
mom in
know,
your corner too. I mean,
yeah, which was great. Yeah.
and having had the distinct honor of being by your side in this process, Pauline, I would offer an additional explanation because watching you, and I remember, this that negativity you're talking about, you wanted to succeed more than you wanted your fear. And that's essentially another way of saying what you just said, because you're gangster, you're a go-getter, you're not somebody that takes no for an answer, but you wanted to make this dream come true more than you wanted to stay safe, trapped in your fear, and obedient. Because you're a gangster lady, you're not obedient to shit, and you're not
Yeah.
going to just obey when somebody says, yeah, pretty much give up on your dream. The only way it's going to happen is with,
Yeah. Yeah.
IVF and a
Doing
tumor
this.
egg.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. That's not gangster of me at all.
Well,
Oh
so
no.
what would the you of today, so as somebody, a living, breathing, actual non-AI individual who has experienced this journey, what would you say to the women listening who may also be facing single digit or less odds? What would you want them to know?
I definitely would want you all to know that never give up. Like it's possible. Just keep your mindset, keep your eye on the prize, keep your mind in the game or your head in the game. Um, Definitely there were some ups and downs in my journey. I probably didn't share too many details about it, but like your things will be met will happen for you, and just keep thinking that, and don't stray away from whatever your mindset is for your goal to be a mom, because you're going to be a mom, and you're going to and it's wonderful, and it's worth the wait, and it's worth the journey. So I know it's so cliche to say it, just don't give up on your dreams, but really don't give up. Just like what Roseanne said, like be a go-getter, be a gangster. Don't give up on anything. Don't let anybody else tell you, throw all these numbers at you and all that stuff. Just ignore it and just kind of go forward, and just have confidence in yourself, because you're meant to be a mom, and it's wonderful, and it's gonna happen for you. So
Oh,
yes.
that's so good, Polly. Well, I'm so honored to have you on, and I'm so grateful for your generosity here because so much changed for you. I mean, I thank you so much for sharing that golf ball story. That's like the coolest thing ever. It's
Yeah,
like
I
I'm like,
I still have it in my bag. I'm like, I'm not gonna use it. Yeah, it's crazy, right?
well, I mean, think about, I mean, because it's really easy to be such, and it's funny. I observe this in people sometimes. Sometimes people find so much certainty in the science, but here's the deal: the science is one part of it, but it's not all of it. There were signs coming at you, and think about who you had to become in order to look at an orange golf ball and know that shit was your sign,
Yes,
girl.
exactly. I know. Wasn't that funny? My husband was like, "Are you like, what is going on with you?" I'm like, blame Roseanne. She has me in this different mindset, and everything happens
Well,
for a reason. Fine.
if
And yeah, so
I will take full responsibility for being the facilitator in that. If I will be so, I'm so happy for that, because what you ended up doing was believing in yourself and the possibility more than you believed in the fear, Pauline. And if that's what put that beautiful baby girl in your hands, hey, start seeing all kinds of crazy shit all around you, because there's only more good coming for you. So, man, well, thank you so much, love. Thank you so much for sharing and being so generous with the women listening. I know that what you've shared here is not only going to inspire, it is certainly going to help change lives and call lives in. So thank you so much, Pauline. We love you. We're going to be praying for you and your family. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you so much, Roseanne, for everything. Thank you so much.
Love this episode of the Fearlessly Fertile podcast? Subscribe now and leave an awesome review. Remember, the desire in your heart to be a mom is there because it was meant for you. When it comes to your dreams, keep saying hell yes.